Hi everyone, welcome to the very first video for the Quantitative Methods course. I'm Richard Hans, I'm your instructor, and this first video will be talking about how to use Stata. Stata is the statistical software that I recommend you would use for your thesis and also what we will be using in this particular methods course. In this video I'll explain a little bit about what Stata is and why I recommend using it, and I'll also show you some basics of how Stata looks and how it tends to work. Starting with why we use Stata in this particular course, there's a few reasons. The first being that it's a program which is statistically quite powerful. In fact, it's powerful enough for most quantitative analyses in published work, and especially for what most empirical master theses tend to do. So it can really do a lot of nice things compared to some other software. It's also relatively easy to learn. For example, you can just type code, so raw code, or you can just use the graphical interface similar to how you would typically use SPSS. So it has somewhat of a less steep learning curve than more advanced software like R, but it has many more options than, say, SPSS. So it's kind of in the middle between those two. It's also supported by really nice documentation. So for all commands you use, there's typically very good documentation about how to use it and how it works. And also, since a lot of people use it, there's a lot of Q&A forums online that address a lot of questions that you might have when you work on your thesis in particular. And finally, even though it's paid software officially, through the university there is a license, so for you as a student it's freely available. Now you might wonder how you can get access to Stata. It's actually quite easy nowadays. So if you go to myeur.nl or my.eur.nl, those are the same websites, you can type in the search bar here on the top left Stata. And if you do that, you see here some information about what Stata is. Normally this would just contain this information, but now that we are all online and cannot go to campus, the ICT people have actually offered a way to install Stata just from your home. So here you see a link to a EUR webpage. If you click this, that would offer you an opportunity to log in and to download Stata. And then further down here you see some information that you would need to fill in for the first time using Stata, being the licensing agreement that Erasmus has with Stata. So once you do this, you are able to install Stata and to use it, at least for the foreseeable future, and this license you see here expires in May. It will extend automatically, I believe, when it expires initially. So let me just show you how Stata typically looks. So this is when you open Stata for the first time, how it would typically look. You see here it's licensed to me. And a Stata window contains different elements that I'll walk you through briefly right now. On the left hand side here, it's still somewhat empty. It's what they call the history, that contains all the commands that have been run in this instance of Stata. So once you close this, the history is of course gone and you won't be able to access that anymore. In the middle here you see all the outputs that are going to come up as we continue with these tutorials. So this is really the core area that you would be looking at. In the bottom here you have the command window. This is where you could type commands if you want to run specific things. So for example, if I type display hello and I press enter, you see here in the middle part, you see the command that I just ran and hello. And on the left hand side here you see that also I ran this command display. So if I double click this now here on the history window, I again run the same command. Right now we don't have data loaded up. That's something we'll get into in the next video. But if we had, you see here on the right, there would be variables. Right now there are no items to show, but this is where you would see all the variables in your data set. And on the bottom right, you see the properties of your variables and of your data set. So as I mentioned, you can use Stata using the user interface. So that's, for example, all here at the bottom. You can do, if you want to open a file, you can go to File, Open, etc. And there's all kinds of different subcommands that you can access via this interface. We'll get to those in some of the next videos. And also there's other aspects of Stata. So for example, if we had loaded up data, we can click here the data editor to see the data set. Right now, as you see here, it's empty. Another really nice thing about Stata is that it can work with what they call do files. I already have one open here on the right, but if I click this do file button here, it opens up what's essentially a text file from which Stata is going to run commands. The nice thing about that is that I can run from this from this text file here my commands without having to retype them in this command box at the bottom here every time. Especially as you move forward with your thesis, you will have a lot of commands that you need to run every time you start up Stata. And the key benefit of this do file is that it helps you track which commands you do, which you have done in the past, so it really helps with replicating what you've done, and it just saves you a lot of work. So here in the top you see a bunch of code. I'll run you through briefly. All the green text that you see in these do files are comments. So those are pieces of text that do not actually contain any code. They are kind of blanked out, if you will. And there's different ways of writing comments. Typically I do that with these 3 dashes here. So anything after these 3 dashes is seen as a comment, so that's something for yourself just to make annotations. You can also put comments between this slash and the asterisk, and then a comment, and closing it with an asterisk and a slash. So this is just for your own documentation essentially. Stata is not going to run anything here. And then here you see black text and blue text. Those are actually the commands that I could also type in the command window. So an example here is what they call the help command. That's the command that links you to all the documentations about specific commands. So say that we have the regression command, which you see here, shorthand being reg, which I have up here. If I want to see information about this command, I can type help reg in the bottom here, and that would lead me to this help file. And I can also run this from the do file. So if I select this line here, I can either press this execute button, which will run the code, or I can press Ctrl D on Windows to run a line that I selected. So if I do that here, again, it would run the same command and bring me to the help file. Just briefly elaborating a little bit on this help file, it's essentially for this regress command, all kinds of information about how it works. As you can see in the top here, the typical syntax for Stata would be the command being regress, and then the inputs, here there would be what they call a dependent variable and independent variable. Then it would have an if statement, which is something we'll get to in the next lecture, next videos, some other things, and then you have comma and all the options. Again, I'm not going to go in depth here right now, but we'll see many examples in the next few videos. And as you scroll through this, you see that the help file contains first a general description of what this command does, but also links to other PDFs and other documentation. For example, a quick start guide, some remarks about the command, examples on how to use it, what methods are underpinning this, also some references to papers, like you can see here at the bottom. So really well documented. So the key thing is knowing which command you need to use. Another benefit of Stata is that next to all these base commands that you can use, so those that come with Stata, it also offers the opportunity to use user designed or user developed packages. So for example, by default, Stata doesn't have many nice options for creating regression tables, which you would need to put in basically any empirical thesis. And some people have written some packages for how to do that. So one nice package that I'll show in some other videos as well is called stout. That's one which you can use for these regression tables. And the way to install packages is by using the ssc install command. So if I run this line here, ssc install stout, it means I want to install the stout package. So if I click the run button, it's going to install this. I already have it installed, so it will be quite brief. But if you don't have it installed yet, it will install this package for you. Once it's installed, you can also access the help file for these packages, as you can see here. So you can see all the information about this specific package. If a package doesn't work via this command, an alternative you can try is what they call search. So I can use the search command to search for the stout. So first it will show all kinds of examples, given that I already have it installed. But if you scroll further down, you see here also the stout command from a different source than what the ssc install would use. If I click that, I can click here to install, and it would do the same as it just did. So specifically, it will install the stout package. That's all that I want to show for now on how to use Stata and how it works. As I mentioned, in the next few videos, we'll actually get our hands dirty. Specifically, the next one, I'll show you how to work with data, how to edit data, etc. And then quite quickly, we'll move also to empirical work, like how to do regressions, how to create tables, and all these sorts of things. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.